Hello, and welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candace Marie, and I'm coming to you guys live on April 23rd, 2018. This is my overview, a little bit wrapping up the energies of what's been happening since last week, leading us into this impending full moon in Scorpio, and that'll be taking place April 23rd, 2018. Hi, everybody in the chat. Hopefully you guys can hear me as usual. If there's any bugs or anything, please let me know because I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat. And I'll be going back and forth between here and popping in and looking at the chart, and I'll be showing you guys the chart in a second. So hi, everybody. All of a sudden, everybody pops in. Welcome back, guys. Holy cow. This has been a week. Thanks, guys, for coming and checking back in with me. It is really rather overwhelming. I think the word that I'm going to use would be overwhelming. And I want to kind of take my time a little bit with this today. So I apologize. You don't quite have my camera, but I have to tell you, I have a ton of planets in Capricorn. I have a ton of planets in Scorpio and in Cancer, and I am just really, really, really under the weather. So I'm actually live streaming this from my bedroom. So I really wanted to make sure that I still checked in with you guys, and I've been working really hard the past couple of days, making quite a bit of notes for today because we have quite a few very intense conjunctions that are happening leading us into the weekend where we are going to be having this full moon. So stay with me. If you guys want to grab a pen and paper, or maybe you're just wanting to take it all in, let this energy and the talk that we have today, wash over you. What you retain is what you retain. What you don't retain is what you don't retain. I don't want to focus too much on telling you specifically what to do, because upon meditation and reflecting of this whole telling people what to do and how they should do things is very much the energy that we're trying to supersede right now. So those of you guys who are tuning in with me, some people are saying they're kind of feeling overwhelmed or feeling not so hot too. Sorry to hear that. It's as much as I want to say I think it's going to get better, I think that the energy, especially if you have any cardinal planets in Capricorn or Cancer or Aries, or Libra, we're kind of getting it from all angles. And so let's go ahead and take a look at what we're going to be discussing today. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over now to the screen that I want to show you. And we're going to start with where we're at right now, because I kind of have there's a method to my madness with how I want to present this to you guys. So let's go ahead and pop over to this screen, which is the actual current planets and where we're at right now. So as you guys see, April 23rd, 2018, I'm here in Los Angeles. So it is a Scorpio rising for right now. So don't get too much consumed in that. But let's start over and kind of go to the beginning, all right? So if you've been following my weekly updates, you've seen that I've been talking about the end of April and how things are going to heat up a little bit. The full moon, like I said, that's going to be hitting will be April 29th, 2018 at 5:58 p.m. Pacific time, 8:58 p.m. Eastern time. Obviously, you want to check your clocks and adjust the time as necessary. To make the most of my astrological forecast, it's important that you check out a birth chart calculator and your sun, moon, and rising sign. Later in the video, I'm going to get into discussing where this energy is going to be impacting you more specifically, talking about the energy of Capricorn and the energy of Scorpio. So it's important to know where this is in your chart. More even so specifically, this particular, moon is going to be hitting at around 9 degrees of Scorpio. So if you have anything from 7 degrees to 11 degrees of Scorpio, if you have a personal planet there, same thing goes for anybody who has any fixed signs between those degrees, you can be experiencing a very intense square because Jupiter is involved. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But let's go ahead and start off with the energy at play here and what we're kind of looking at right now. And I've created a really long list of notes that I wanted to talk about. So first things first, this moon being on the 29th, 29 being Saturn's number. That was the one thing that I really sat and reflected on this morning was what is the purpose of that? You know, why are we having this moon at 29 degrees? In astrology, we know that we have 0 to 29 degrees for each sign, creating all 360 degrees. So when we get to a 29, or the numerology behind a 29, meaning, you know, mastery, we're going to master something. You know, that 2 plus 9, creating an 11, is still connecting us to our highest vibration, our spiritual path. However, 29s have a tendency to be kind of this teetering point where we're either going to fall back into old patterns or we're going to supersede the energy at hand and really be able to shift into a new territory, being like a 0 degree. So even though this is not a 29 degree per se, that idea of 29 in that day, I think, is really symbolic of Saturn. And Saturn very much, in a way, has kind of been maybe, you know, given a bad rap in the past month or two. Quite a few people have been talking about how much heavier the energy has felt since Saturn went into Capricorn in December of last year. And certainly it's almost like, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I'm literally just like walking through mud. I don't know how else to explain it. It's like I may not get there the fastest that I want to get there. And I think that's the whole purpose of Saturn and Capricorn is time, this reflection of time and how long it takes us to learn the lesson, that we're not so much focused on the end result. Saturn and Sag was very much what things could be. But now Saturn and Capricorn is, okay, if that's where we want to get, if that's where we want to go, then how are we strategically taking it step by step and almost like going up a very steep hill? So even talking about this, it's like I was faced with so much resistance just within my schedule alone today with getting this done. But I thought, no, you know, this is my overall 3-year plan to be much more consistent, not only with my work, but much more consistent with showing up and being able to help people. And so those of you guys who are newer to my channel, this is not just, you know, a platform that I use to be able to tinker around with astrology. This is my full-time occupation and my passion. But I also have been using this channel to document my own personal Saturn's return. And so for those of you guys who are born in the late 80s, going into the early 90s, I think you of all people really can appreciate what this feels like, because now I feel like we're really faced with having to do a lot of the emotional, heavy moving. Thank you, SG. You said it appropriately. For this month, I find it interesting that my selected herb to be working with was rue. And that was definitely something that kind of came to me intuitively as wanting to shift energies and wanting to move energies for me in my physical home, for me in my spiritual practice. And oddly enough, I was gifted some rue by a friend of mine. Actually, my assistant sent me some, and it actually came under the name of Ruda. And I started laughing because I was like, what does this mean? And then I started realizing, like, oh, it is rue, or also known as bitterwort. And this herb is ruled by Mars and Saturn. And so I'm using this because Mars and Saturn, as well as Pluto, will become a huge theme as we're coming into the full moon. So those of you guys who are a little bit more on the magical herbal end of things, you may really appreciate working with this herb. I'm actually using it and I'm burning it in my house. And it's really kind of helping me shift a lot of these Capricorn energies. Looking at this also, I made a couple notes. During this full moon, it may be helpful to work with crystals that are very grounding. We have a lot of earth energy going on right now. So some people are opting to spend some time outside. Other people are opting to be spending time hiking or getting their hands or their feet in the dirt, or maybe perhaps you're wanting to work with crystals. So if you're looking to work with crystals, what I would actually say is you may want to take a look at working with crystals like amber or citrine, smoky quartz. These are some that I'm opting to work with for the time being, because I feel like it's going to help keep me a little bit more centered or grounded. But obviously, everybody's got their own stuff. Somebody was asking me a good herbal book to work with. It really depends. I really like the book by Kat from Lucky Mojo, the root work herbal book. You know, that's what I like to use. What does rue look like? In my opinion, it almost kind of looks like dried, like the dried passion leaves. It sounds silly, but it looks like tea. It's just kind of this dried up shavings. It kind of looks almost like a mix between the passion flower shavings and maybe some dried wood. But it's also known, like I said, as I believe bitterwort. But you can look up the different uses and the variations of it online. But I personally like the green herbal book. I'm trying to think of who it's by. I want to say it's by Buckingham. But I definitely really like using Lucky Mojo and Kat specifically, who works at Lucky Mojo. I've been following her work for quite some time and collecting quite a few of her books. But if I get the time later, I'll plug some of these things in so you guys can take a look. But moving on, so when we think about, Scorpio, we think about psychic, intuitive, investigative qualities. Okay, so now let me go ahead because you guys can see the planets at hand here. And I may bounce back to this in just a second. But for right now, let's take a look. Yes, black onyx will work. Somebody's asking about black onyx. Taking a look at this full moon chart. So if you guys haven't seen it, I just switched it over. So this is the actual chart associated with the full moon that will be happening on the 29th. Now, there's a couple different points here that I want to kind of discuss. Going back to what I was saying, Scorpio being psychic, intuitive, investigative, intense. When I think of a Scorpio full moon, I definitely think of intensity, because Scorpio, following with the archetype, of the phoenix and being able to be reborn, is rather significant. And it's nice because, we have this full moon at a time where it's playing very, very well with Jupiter in Scorpio. And so Jupiter is the illuminator, it's the teacher. And it's interesting because Jupiter tends to really want to go outward, but in Scorpio, especially when it's going retrograde, it's going inward. So there's a lot of reflection, reworking. Certainly I'm seeing a huge number of people who are turning to studying astrology and tarot and the occult, and really wanting to dig a little bit deeper and have a better solid understanding to how energy works, how magic works, how these things work. People are looking for teachers. And so this is how it's playing out a little bit in this community. But this sextile here with Pluto and Mars is just a very, very intense. At times it can be very passionate. At times it can be very scary energy. It's powerful. The ruling planet of Scorpio, the traditional ruling planet of Scorpio, is Mars. And the more, current ruler is now Pluto. And so these two are the stars during this full moon when we see this conjunction with Saturn and Lilith and Pluto in Mars in Capricorn. And so this is an excellent time to be diving deep into ritual, okay? And really, really taking some sacred time to take a step back and perhaps be reflecting. People may be opting to do shadow work. I'm also seeing a lot of people who are choosing to work with dark goddesses. One of my personal favorites is working with Hecate. And I think that this moon has the opportunity to illuminate something. And upon meditating, one of the biggest things that I got was it takes a little bit of light to illuminate the dark. So what's interesting here is with every full moon, we always have this opposition of the moon, the lunar energy, the feminine, in opposition to the sun. Now the sun is in Taurus now, and it's grounding and it's secure and it's beautiful. And I was listening recently to a lecture about astrology, and what the astrologer was saying is we don't really study 12 zodiac signs. What we're really studying and identifying and honing in on is 6 particular archetypes. And, everybody knows we have 12 zodiacs, but when we think about the actual personality, we can't understand Scorpio without understanding Taurus. We can't understand Capricorn without understanding Cancer. And so this starts to kind of bring up the theme that I don't feel like it's a matter of specifically just honing in on, where Capricorn is, because, I'll get more so into like my evolutionary perspective. But the truth is that we are in a very, very, very intense time where the world's energy is shifting spiritually, physically, psychologically. Things, very intense things are going to begin happening here very soon. Especially considering that at the time of the full moon, we are going to be having Mars and Pluto conjunct, beginning to build into squares with Uranus in Aries. And so as of mid-May, we will begin to see Uranus move into Taurus. And so, the final several weeks up until this point will be rather significant and start to give us some clues about what we can be expecting over the next 7 or 8 years with Uranus in Taurus. But let me back up a little bit. So I just, made some notes here. Some of them are kind of, comedy, because I like to be able to laugh at some things and kind of poke some fun at stuff. But of the major highlights of this week, something that I was taking a look at is this David Meade character, who's been coming out in the media and making comments about the rapture, the end of days coming, the end of the world. And, he's made a couple of comments like this and predictions in the past. But what I found particularly interesting is that today was the most recent prediction as for the end of the world. Now, do I agree with that? No, to each their own. But what's interesting is that he has claimed this several times over, and now more recently has pinpointed that the beginning of the end would be today, April 23rd, 2018, claiming that Planet X, or Nibiru, is here, and that there is an alignment that's coming together of the Sun, Moon, and Jupiter in Virgo. Which made me completely laugh out loud, because those of us who are astrologically in tune, we know that that's not the case. Because currently we have, if I were even to show you right now, we have Jupiter that's in Scorpio. The moon is actually currently in Leo. So none of that information really applies, and it has in fact been proven by comments and statements that have come out from multiple sources. Astrologically, that is not the case. So why am I bringing this up? Because this Mars-Pluto energy squaring off with Uranus can very well be the beginning of what may be some very, very chaotic things over the next couple of weeks. And I do think that the energy screams of, organized military conflict and issues with how we are coming across to other countries and other nations. I do think it has a lot to do with people coming out and rioting and police brutality and some of the things that I've talked about in previous videos. But what's amazing is that it's actually happening. If you look back over what's happened in the past week, we had the student walkouts over the gun control and the activism issues, where all of the students were leaving their classrooms and making some statements about the fact that, we're no longer going to tolerate that America is not taking our issues with gun control seriously. So when I was talking about this last week, I was like, people are going to be rioting or they're going to be protesting, but they're doing it to be able to create change, and that very much this, Uranus going into Taurus, and South Node making some squares pretty soon to that placement, and Mars as well later on next month, is youth no longer tolerating not being taken seriously, and them starting to rise up against and kind of, fighting for change. We've also seen recently in the news that India is or has made the decision to give the death penalty for child rape cases, which is a very, very big thing, considering the fact that there is a lot that goes on culturally there in regards to young marriages and women being mistreated, and this still being kind of like a hush hush topic. And so now it's being brought up to the mainstream media that it's not going to be tolerated, that people are finally going to start being held accountable and actually being given the death penalty for treating minors in this way. Huge changes going on there. So that's an amazing thing that's happening currently out in India. Somebody in the chat's talking about everything that's happening in Toronto. I was seeing that something like, I think 8 or 9 people who may have potentially died or been seriously injured as a result of a car crashing through a crowd of people in Toronto. I'll pull up some information on that towards the end of this, but I did note that that just recently happened today. We've been watching, I don't get the impression that a lot of people are seeing this in the States, but the deadly anti-government protests that are happening in Nicaragua with students that are now protesting, what's going on with their government. And now the government is opting to make changes to the welfare system because they're trying to kind of hit back and try to keep people from protesting. Now, what's really interesting is that, this is now leading to looting and violence plaguing parts of the country. But I do think that the students are standing up and raising awareness that they're not willing to let their government potentially run something that may be something similar to a dictatorship. So are you guys kind of seeing what's happening here and the trends that are happening in the world? Jupiter and Scorpio is magnifying these issues that have to do with abuse, scandal, sex, and making sextiles to the Pluto Mars, and everybody's throwing down over it. Continuing on, I've also put some notes here about the anti-fascist protests, protesting the neo-Nazi rallies in Georgia. It did lead to several arrests. Thankfully, it doesn't really seem like anybody was entirely hurt. But that was another theme that was coming up of this uprising, and you're seeing a lot of people who are going toe-to-toe over their belief systems. The Armenian prime minister resigned after protests in the capital. And then we also see that the Waffle House shooter was captured after a 34-hour manhunt in Nashville. Now, he was missing for nearly 34 hours, was completely MIA. There was a manhunt. They were trying to find this 29-year-old who brutally shot multiple people, and there was a death of 4 people at a Waffle House, and he was found today. So he was taken in today, and I find it interesting that, he's 29 years old. And you see a lot of these people who have these super conjunctions that are really affecting their mental, emotional, issues. Not everybody, depends on the placement. But I mean, this is the kind of energy that we see when Mars and Pluto collide. And when it begins to form squares with Uranus and Aries, you're going to see a lot more happening the end of this month and going into May. Now, this is happening to raise awareness to where we need to be pushing legislation and the government to stand up and finally get their act together. Will it happen all at once? No, I don't believe so. And I'll talk about that in the future videos. But part of that is because, currently we see that the North Node is in Leo, the South Node is in Aquarius. Later next month, Mars will become conjunct with the South Node, and in June it will go retrograde. And so I do think that you're going to see, as Mars makes its way back into Capricorn, that there are some significant changes that are happening in government and legislation, especially when Mars and the South Node are conjunct, making squares to when Uranus goes into Taurus. And so there may need to be more public devastation. There may need to be more natural disasters, and I'll get into that. But I think that natural disasters or earthquakes, especially when we begin to see the squares with Uranus and Taurus to Mars, that there is going to be things that's going to take place that is going to require us to either come together or start to really bring these topics front and center to show where we really need to make changes. Brass is making some comments and talking about the T-square with the nodal axes, and so this is something else that I'm going to talk about: the North Node in Leo, the Moon in a T-square with the South Node. And whenever we see a T-square, especially with the Moon, we have to make these emotional shifts, and we have to shift out of the emotional fear. And it's unfortunately, with Scorpio, because a Scorpio in the Moon in Scorpio is considered kind of a detriment or a fall, meaning that it's not the most ideal place to be having the Moon. And when it creates and it builds into this, fixed cross here, we start to see that there are a lot of pressured tensions and situations that are going on with the government, what's going to happen financially, what's going to be happening with our country, and how we're leading ourselves. I mean, really, essentially, as corny as it sounds, I don't believe these changes are going to happen until we really start focusing on this North Node in Leo, and that's being able to be courageous enough to make the changes that we need to be making on an individual level. How about some good news, guys? All right, so as the transit moon this morning joined the North Node in Leo, a new royal was born. Kate Middleton announces her third child, and it was a boy. Haven't quite gotten the name yet. Not sure if it's been put out there, but I find it very interesting. As the North Node and the Moon was conjuncting, we begin to see that there's new royalty coming into this world. And my goodness, this little baby being born with a Saturn in Capricorn and a Pluto in Capricorn and a Mars in Capricorn, he's going to be one intense little dude. All right, so let's go ahead and really start getting into the specifics of this chart now. So picking up the pieces of the Mars-Pluto conjunction. So essentially it's changes, all right? We're going to see these changes happening. Like I said, we have to kind of let the dust settle closer to early May. So whatever kind of goes on in the next immediate couple weeks is happening for a greater purpose. When we see a full moon, it's always about this accumulation of something. People have this common misconception that, a full moon is an ending, dramatic shifts and things like that. I mean, I think that the full moon is bringing everything to the surface that we need to be conscious and aware of to help us better set intentions for the following new moon, which will be happening in mid-May. But certainly for some signs this month, it can mean some dramatic uncovering of information or secrets, some very, very intuitive insights that you were going to be picking up. So those of us who are a little bit more sensitive or a little bit more empathic may find ourselves really kind of struggling with this energy this month. My best advice would be stay grounded, go hiking, spend time outside. Focus on your meditation. Certainly, there's a lot of energy at play that can be very grounding, but only if we choose to use it. See, the outer planets, are still very much kind of at odds with some of each other. So I think that we have to tune into that frequency and choose to create stability. Now, the sun in Taurus is making a trine to Saturn in Capricorn at the time of the full moon. So we've got the sun here making this trine to Saturn, giving us the stability that we need. So when we see that, it's basically Saturn saying with the sun, okay, make it real. If we want security, make it real. If the people of our country, really want to protect our financial investments, then they're going to really lean on the government. And this may have to do with Jupiter in Scorpio, that's making a little bit more of a laser focus on our budgeting, or where there is scandals going on with money and hush money, and where things are being blown, and where there is this imbalance potentially of wealth, and really uncovering what people of power are doing with money. And so this is such a big deal. I cannot stress this enough. Partially because, as Uranus starts making its way further through into Taurus, it's really then that we're going to start to begin to see the potential disrupt of the markets. And, Uranus is about rebellion and social change and shaking up the status quo. Taurus is usually very slow and very stable and very calculated and very secure. And so perhaps maybe what we're seeing with Jupiter and Scorpio since the fall of last year is identifying with where we put too much security on our loans or our credit, or perhaps maybe even our relationships, and what countries are constantly bailing us out financially. And it may turn out to be an emperor has no clothes situation when Uranus is making squares with the Mars retrograde in the next couple of weeks. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but now is a really great time to be focusing on where we may be too overly dependent in some situations. That's kind of like, oh, well, I'm just going to put all my eggs in this basket. I'm just going to keep loading up those credit cards, or I'm just going to keep, taking loans, or I'm going to overextend myself financially. I would caution a lot of people to not do that because it may potentially be a bumpy next couple of months with the first few months of Uranus and Taurus. Now, later in 2018, it will regress and go retrograde back into Aries temporarily. But I do think it's pretty safe to say around the 14th and the 15th of May, when Uranus first goes into Taurus, you're going to have a pretty solid idea of what you may be expecting over the next 7 or 8 years. So stay tuned. I'll do a video on that. But now is definitely a really great time to listen to your intuition. Now, the other thing that I'm taking a look at here is the Sun in Taurus and the Moon in Scorpio, like I said, are square to the nodes. And so in the type of astrology that I practice, more so in evolutionary astrology, when we see squares to the nodes, it's about, are we living in the past or are we living in the future? The North node being Dharma, destiny, what we're here to achieve. The South node being, karma, what's comfortable, what we're really trying to take in a good sense of like, okay, I've got these qualities that I can use to be able to achieve my North node. But when you see that they're squaring each other, the question is, are we going to live in past patterns, or are we going to choose to make a change and do it for the better and do it for the future, or do it for the North node? So this very much is the epitome of a rebirth energy, a coming into a new way of living. And there may be some, like I said, very startling things that come up this month that is just this very brutal, this is what I have been afraid to acknowledge, or this is what I've been a little bit too overly attached to, or this is what I'm too dependent on. Remember that in astrology, Scorpio, or the 8th house, represents the partner. It represents the partner's money, death, sex, taxes, karma, past lives, things where we may be working out some karmic situations, especially as you see Saturn in Capricorn. We are very much coming to this point in our lives when we're no longer passing the buck, so to say, ancestrally. And as a country, as an individual, as a family member, we are becoming conscious and aware of where there are power struggles in our life. And we have to choose if we would like to be a victim, or if we would like to be somebody who is going to, take the power back and not play the power plays. Somebody's asking questions about EA squares to the north, skip steps. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, essentially, the squares, I'm assuming you're referencing Wolf Green stuff. Anytime he talks about having planets squaring the nodes, it is a skip step, and it's something we have to go back to. So in a way, this is kind of referencing, and I'm talking a lot about this because when I originally did the what is it? It was the chart for the inauguration for Trump. The descendant of that chart was Scorpio, and that's where the moon was. So in my interpretation, and I'll get more into this on Wednesday, I'm going to do a live video about America and what's going on with America's chart and Trump and all that stuff. I think what you're about to see is a significant breakthrough in really some proof in terms of following the money. You know, where did the money come from? Were there campaign contributions from other countries? Were there things that were paid into that were going to play a role in how our government was run? And you see that because of the square here to the north node, a king, a ruler, and also to the square to the south node of Aquarius government. And so when Mars shows up here, I think more is going to come up in the next month, and you're going to see a lot more of this. But essentially, yes, it has a lot to do with applying the skip step method. Moving on to the moon in Scorpio, sextiling Saturn and Capricorn. I mean, a little bit, I spoke about this already, but when we see a sextile in astrology, we call this kind of like lazy energy, you know, unless we put the move or put the energy into this and we use it in the sextile, then all of a sudden things can kind of get real. And so I think that, referencing once again that chart that I did, if the general public gets afraid enough, you know, a lot of this Pluto Mars can happen, and it can be violence, and it can be crime, and it can be brutality, and it can be issues with police officers and governments. And, you know, with this energy, it's kind of like when the people hit, you know, the government's going to hit back twice as hard, or you're going to see that there is going to be a blockade or something happening where people are wanting to not allow this energy to get out of hand. But essentially what we're seeing is it's just a matter of time. And so how do we apply this to our own lives? You know, the question would be, what is it that's going on specifically in your life that you already intuitively feel like may not necessarily be safe, or where it may not necessarily feel right? Something may feel off. This is a very, very, very spiritual psychic moon, because we're also seeing that Jupiter in Scorpio is making a trine to Neptune. And we've already kind of been in this energy for some time. It's increasing again now that Jupiter is going retrograde. And so when we begin to see these, it's an opportunity to tune into a higher frequency. It's almost like getting caught in the hustle and bustle and the chaos of this energy is not really going to help. Pluto is Hades, you know, the god of the underworld, the god of death, and currently is going retrograde. And so that, once again, is also turning inward, is what's going on around us, and the conflict that we find in the world, or the conflict that we find in our relationships, or the conflict that we're finding with our careers or our employers or whatever, or our family. Is this purely because our fear is driving this? You know, that's really something I would be reflecting on right now, is because we are moving at such an accelerated pace energetically, are we bringing about our worst fears because it's something that we just have to, you know, deal with, work through it, push it aside, and then move on to the, you know, to the next lesson, perhaps. The other thing that we're seeing is that Mercury in Aries currently is making squares to Saturn, and so we're no strangers to this. We've been dealing with this for about the past month and a half because of the Mercury retrograde. So now Mercury has gone direct. It is moving forward in Aries. And it's going to be making some squares here. And so this will be especially taking place a lot more after the full moon going into May, as Mercury moves its way into further degrees of Aries and becomes conjunct with Uranus. And so look for some real significant explosive information being released into the world the first 10 days of May. But really what Saturn making squares to Mercury is about is holding us accountable. Truth and honesty will set you free. And sometimes, you know, relaying that truth, having those difficult conversations, Mercury and Aries, speaking out for yourself can be very challenging because you've got so many conflicting energies here between Saturn and Uranus. You've got Mercury making an in conjunction to the moon, Mercury making an in conjunction to Jupiter. It's like, these are the things I want to talk about, but I'm afraid of the consequences. So there's a lot of, like, you know, I would say like April kind of, who was it that I was listening to? I was listening to, what's his name? He's like the wizard astrology guy. I can't even think of his name right now. But basically, you know, this being a time where we have to hurry up and wait. Hurry up and wait. We got to do it all right now, and then we got to pull back. Oh, Rick Levine. Rick Levine's awesome. If you guys haven't listened to him, he does his month ahead stuff. That's really great. But he talks about how, April was just like this whirlwind of energy. And then all of a sudden you have to pump the brakes because, Saturn is constantly checking us throughout this whole aspect back and forth with Saturn and Mercury. So be honest, be direct with people. We're coming out of now having had these Mercury Saturn squares a couple times. So whatever the lesson has been, really the final test is the end of this month. And that's the time that we begin to kind of really take a look at things and go, whoa, okay, this has come up 3 times now. I really need to handle it. Jupiter and that sextile to Pluto, that very much is knowledge in the shift. And I'm especially loving seeing a lot of people from, the 70s that have Uranus in Scorpio, the people from the 80s and the 90s who have Pluto in Scorpio, even the people who have Saturn in Scorpio. Jupiter hitting these points in our charts is really tuning us into the knowledge. It's like, as much as I hate to say it, the people who are really, I think, making the bigger difference in this world right now are the people who are tuning in and doing things in a more scorpionic way, where they're doing their research, they're plugging away, they're, putting out content in a very subliminal, very under the radar kind of the way, rather than running around yelling and screaming, the world's on fire, and pumping the media full of a bunch of just crap. There's a lot of gold right now, astrologically, for a lot of astrologers that are coming on board who I think are doing some amazing things with this energy and hopefully relaying this information in a very knowledgeable way to really speak to the Scorpio part of ourselves, and to be able to teach us that there is a capability of creating shift. But really what it comes down to is our own choices to be able to take a step back and really focus on how we independently can begin to create change. So this month I ask you, take a step back and look at what hurdles have you been having to jump? What has been some of the most difficult aspects for you this month? What's been the biggest challenge? Most likely there's some kind of connection to Saturn. And so it's a really important time to understand where Scorpio and where Capricorn is in your life, because it's not just Capricorn, it's also Scorpio. And that's why this moon is so significant, because they're in such a positive flow to each other in this moon that it's like, Scorpio is just illuminating everything that you might be afraid of, to just really make sure that you're getting your butt in action and you're really kind of cleaning out your closet. But as of the beginning of May, that's when you're really going to be able to start coming back online and really starting to see the fruit of your labors, and really start seeing that all the hard work is really kind of coming to fruition. So the other note that I wanted to make, and I've said this in a past video, but Chiron has now moved into the sign of Aries after quite a long stretch in Pisces. It had been in Pisces since about 2011. So now we are shifting gears and really becoming a little bit more fearless with the way that we're going about healing ourselves, and really tuning into our own abilities, and taking the bull by the horns and choosing to heal, rather than feeling like we want to be a victim. Somebody was just making a comment about Uranus leaving Aries. Yes, I very much want Uranus to leave Aries too. It has been on my moon, and it has been a very, very emotional ride. Currently, it's actually just chilling on my point of fortune. So that's been particularly interesting for me, because I feel like it's really kind of opened me up to a lot of people who I'm supposed to be working with. But it'll, like I said, it'll leave, it'll go into Taurus, it will be there for several months, and then it will go retrograde back into Aries later in 2018 briefly. So we're going to get a little taste of Uranus in Taurus, just to kind of see what it's like. And I'm going to do a video on that. But, just off the cuff, Uranus being about innovation and technology and the internet. I mean, I'm almost wondering if a lot of what's going to happen here later, Let me do this so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Later on, when we begin to see that Mars is closer to the conjunction of the South Node. So in June, that's when Mars is going to begin to go retrograde. And so what I'm actually kind of thinking here is once the South Node is conjunct Mars and the South Node is making some squares to Uranus, what may happen is after all of the crap that has come up about privacy rights and what's been going on with technology, and this whole scandal with Facebook and other online entities having, information on us personally, you might see a rollback in legislation, and that legislation might actually start moving forward, and laws and regulations might start being put in place to protect us virtually. So I'm hoping that it's positive. Somebody's asking questions about, will Uranus help Earth signs? Well, whenever you have an outer planet in an Earth sign, you begin, if you are an Earth sign or if you have an Earth placement, it will make trines. So based off of what it sounds like, if you've got a Capricorn rising, get ready because Uranus is going to trine your ascendant. And Saturn's already kind of playing around your ascendant. It's going to go retrograde in the summertime and come back to your ascendant. So for Capricorn ascendants, you guys are really, man, you guys are really, really going through it. But remember that Saturn crossing the ascendant is asking us to give something up. And so as Uranus trines your ascendant, Spica, basically you're being asked to evolve. You're being asked to change. And it may be scary because Uranus is very unstable, and it can be kind of quirky, and it can be kind of different. But yes, Uranus is also trining the Cap Stellium generation. And so that's not abnormal. Well, I mean, sometime right before your Saturn return, your natal Uranus will trine Uranus, and that's erupting you and waking you up to change. But right now, yes, for the Cap Stellium people, this is a little bit more interesting because Saturn's kind of riding our ass right now. And then we're also seeing that Uranus is going into Taurus. So it's going to be more interesting than usual. It'll be a lot of change and innovation jam-packed into a 3-year period between Uranus and Saturn and the South Node. So there's that. Somebody else is asking questions about Capricorn rising. So you got that 19-degree Capricorn rising. So Pluto being on your ascendant right now, yeah, I mean, getting it from all sides. But basically what I would say is that you really want to go and educate yourself and learn more about what's going on with Pluto crossing your ascendant, because that's a very, very intense transit. I mean, essentially that's energetically, let's call it, going through hell. And your cells and your body and your environment is shifting very quickly. So it's very important for you to go and pay attention, because if you've got that Taurus sun, Pluto is still making a loose trine to your moon, to your sun. So transit Pluto in Capricorn on your ascendant is trining your sun, and it's asking you to make some major changes. I mean, that to me kind of screams like going through an ego death and really having to focus on the heart space and really having to let go of something for the best of your body, but also for the best of your soul. Okay. So, somebody asked Eagles, you're asking about if it conjuncts your IC. So are you asking about this natally or the transit? Natally, I have Uranus conjunct my IC, and it just means that my home is just crazy. I mean, but obviously I also do astrology from home. If you're having Uranus transiting your 4th house, get ready for 7 years of some emotional changes. Think of the 4th house as the womb, your emotional self. So things with your family can come up, things, with your physical home. Okay, you have it natally. Cool. So it sounds like, as far as I'm concerned, maybe you're a part of that Capricorn stellium people. What is your birth year? Like I said, though, oh, you mean transit. Okay, so yeah, so, like I said, when Uranus transits your 4th house, your IC, you may find that you're moving into a space where there's a lot of things changing around your home or your family, things changing with you emotionally. You may be at some point going and living, Uranian is with multiple people or having multiple people in your home. The other thing is I could see that as a radical change in your diet and the way that you're going about eating. Obviously, we would need to look at the whole chart, but it's a very disruptive thing to have transit wise. I have it natally, so maybe I've learned to kind of work with it a little bit better than most people. But that's a transit you definitely want to go and learn about. And then you want to go and take a look at planets that are aspecting your fourth house. And if it's your descendant, buckle up, because Uranus going through your seventh house of relationships will be a wild ride for about 7 or 8 years in terms of how you relate to other people. Okay. Part of fortune in the fourth house. So, if it's making aspects to your fourth house and your seventh house, it can be a time where emotionally you're changing and you're opening up and you're becoming a little bit more in tune to partnerships and bringing partnerships in. Obviously, guys, it depends on the entire chart. I mean, I think that at some point here in the future, what I'm planning on doing is sitting down, and I'm going to talk to you guys about how I analyze a chart so I can kind of show you the way that I do it, because I use a couple different modalities, but my main focus in my area of practice is in evolutionary astrology. So essentially, I would go and take a look at, the sun, moon, and rising. I want to see where Pluto is, aspects to Pluto, look at the nodes, aspects to the nodes, and then work through it evolutionary. So I talk about, where you're coming from and where you're going. People are asking questions about Uranus transiting over the south node. So that's a time where your love life can be really interesting. You could find that there is some type of energy of you working with children and fulfilling some kind of karma of, working with children, being more childlike, bringing in lots of creative energies. And now somebody's also asking about Uranus transiting the 10th house. So that can be about working and working with groups of people, bringing technology or the internet somehow in conjunction with what you're doing for work. Uranus is ruled by Venus. So certainly the way that you're making money may change. You may go more in an artistic direction. So yeah, stay tuned. I mean, I'm going to do a video because so many people, for whatever reason, ask me how I go about analyzing a chart. And so actually what I've been considering doing is maybe finding a way on my social media platform to do like a giveaway of some kind. And maybe perhaps what I'll do is I will choose somebody at random and take their chart and turn that into a video and use that as a way to be able to show you guys how I do the breakdown of a chart. I mean, astrology is something that you are always going to continue to keep growing and learning. And, it's like, I have become such a nerd. I mean, I don't even listen to the radio anymore. When I'm driving, I'm usually listening to lectures, or when I'm cooking, I'm usually listening to audiobooks. So I think that even my own personal ways of interpreting the chart are continuing to grow, but it may be beneficial and helpful. So that way, I get a lot of clients that come through just like watching my social media. And so maybe perhaps being able to show you guys how a session with me kind of works and like what you're going to get from me can be really helpful. So I'll plan on doing that in the future. For those of you guys who are still listening, I want to go back to this full moon chart because I'm going to start talking about how it's going to affect each and every one of the individual signs. Okay, so with my predictions, like I said, you really want to know your sun, your moon, and your rising sign. The most accurate information you're actually going to be getting is from your rising sign. Then you want to listen to your sun sign. Then you want to listen to your moon sign. This is for my predictions. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get started. I'm going to tune in. I've got my tarot deck in front of me, and I'm actually going to start with Aries. So Aries, for you guys, this full moon is happening in your 8th house. Okay, so a full moon in your 8th house is very much symbolic of karma, of endings, of clearing things. Perhaps maybe, you're having a better understanding of what's going on financially. You're working out themes of your worth. It's kind of hard for me to talk about a full moon in the 8th house and not talk about death. And what is death? Is death always, you know, necessarily something that is going to be physical? No. Death can be the ending of a relationship. Death can be the ending of, you know, something that involves a career. Death can be physical, spiritual. You know, it's not necessarily a one fit thing. So for you guys in your eighth house, having that full moon that's also connected to the 10th house, it is possible that you're coming to this understanding that, you know, you might be done with something. Or maybe you're feeling like you're not necessarily feeling as secure financially as you could be at a job. But now is a really good time to tune in and kind of pay attention that if something needs to end, let it end, because you've got this new moon that's coming in your second house soon. And, you know, later in May, when you have this, Uranus is also going to be in your second house. So you may be taking a look at things and kind of determining maybe perhaps that, you know, you're going to start taking a chance and looking at a new way of making money. I'm seeing a lot of Aries that are making some changes in their professional realm. The cards that I get for you are, yeah, Five of Swords, the Devil, and the Nine of Cups. So, I mean, the Devil really talking about restraint, and it also reflects and it connects to Capricorn. The Nine of Cups is talking about specifically getting what you want, being happy with the end result, being very, you know, positive about, you know, it's the wish card. And the Five of Swords comes up as the first card. So that's talking about like disagreements, disruptions, delays, things not going according to plan. If that's the case, it's happening for a reason. Many Aries may find themselves this month trying to cut loose from anything that's holding them back. For whatever reason, if there are power plays that are happening, it's kind of recommended don't argue, don't disagree with people, don't have confrontations with people. Let it play out the way that it's supposed to be playing out. Perhaps maybe this is just happening to kind of show you where you may be holding on too tightly to something that is not in alignment. I've got quite a few people who I'm seeing also who are Aries risings, who have all of these placements in their 10th house right now with Mars and Saturn and Pluto, and they are saying goodbye to older family members. It's not abnormal. You may be finding that you're kind of tuning in more so than usual, and perhaps maybe having some feelings that something's about to change. And so the cards do suggest that don't fight it. Don't fight it. If there's conflict, let something end if it needs to end. Nine of Cups is getting what you want in the end. All right. So now we're moving on here to Taurus. And Taurus for you, this is a full moon in your 7th house. So full moon in the 7th house, I mean, I was actually just writing my horoscopes, and this one seemed particularly interesting to me, especially in the month ahead. I mean, you guys, full moon in your 7th house is something coming to a head in regards to your relationships, okay? And having some kind of epiphany about your relationships. And for some of you guys, it may be taking the next step in relationships. You have a lot of support here. I could see a lot of Tauruses that are really coming into knowing what they want and wanting security this month, really focusing more on being able to be consistent in a relationship and bringing in partnership that can be more secure. But with a full moon in your 7th house, there is some kind of an illumination around you and your partner. And I don't see this being a bad thing. I do kind of get the impression, though, that, you know, you're going to get it all out in the open, and whatever you need to discuss, you're going to be discussing. You know, you do currently still have, you know, Mercury hovering in your 12th house. You might still be marinating on some things. These may not be things that are coming out until, you know, May. But if there are any issues in a relationship right now, Taurus, now is the time that it's going to start really kind of presenting itself. And I mean presenting in itself in a way where it cannot be ignored. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Jupiter, you know, is hovering in your 7th house. So you're becoming more in tune to relationships, and you're learning about relationships. And maybe perhaps you have a partner that's been on, you know, wavering or kind of back and forth, or maybe it's been you. But I see a lot of strength and security coming up for you this month, and I see a conversation coming. The cards that I pull for you guys is the Queen of Coins, the Ace of Coins, The King of Coins. How appropriate. This may be solidifying a relationship or a business partnership. This does not necessarily mean it has to be romantic. This may be a time where, you know, with all of the energy going into Taurus, you're feeling very grounded, you're feeling very abundant, you're looking for a partner. You and a partner are talking about long-term plans. I don't see this being negative at all. I see it being very positive for the two of you. I feel like there are conversations that are coming up though that need to be had, so that way, you know, if you've been sitting on something and wondering and letting it kind of marinate, it's like your partner may pick up on that on their own. They may take this upon themselves to kind of really kind of tap in and pick up a little bit more than I think you're aware of. Having a seventh house in Scorpio means that your partners are very, very, very tuned in. They may be able to read you better than you think. So if opportunities present yourself to have a conversation, you may be pleasantly surprised that partners are a little bit more in tune than you give them credit for. All right, so now we're going to move on here to Gemini. Gemini, this is your sixth house. So the sixth house for Gemini, having to do with your daily routine, having to do with your health, having to do with your coworkers, having to do with a potential change or an ending. You know, coworkers may be leaving, maybe you're switching it up a little bit, and you know your schedule's changing, and you're having to kind of go with the flow of those schedule changes. Be patient if that's the case. Be patient. I'm seeing a lot of Gemini risings that are experiencing a lot of frustration. I mean, even just looking at the chat, I'm seeing a couple ooks. You know, all of it comes down to delegating, you know, your tasks better, you know, better managing your schedule, better managing your diet, better managing things. And, you know, Scorpio is notoriously where we turn inward when we're afraid. And so some Geminis are noticing that they're having to be a little bit more creative with their work. They're having to be a little bit more diligent with their schedule consistently, you know, making some time to be better with their diet, making some time to be better with their routine. Okay, so if there's something where you are feeling a little held back, maybe perhaps the full moon is just going to illuminate where you kind of need to work on something a little bit better. I see this a lot as like releasing energy because you've got quite a few mobile planets also in your eighth house. So what bad habits can you give up, Gemini? You know, what can you release and let go of that's no longer serving you? That's the question that I would be asking myself right now, because, you know, half the time these are just crutches. These are things that we lean on. We make excuses. All right. So the cards that I got for you is Two of Swords, the Lovers, the Nine of Pentacles. So, you know, you guys have a lot of action in your eighth house. And I've talked about this recently with Geminis and budgeting and being better about being more honed in on what's going on work-wise. And basically what it's talking about is you have a choice. Okay. So Geminis, that Two of Swords is about options, you know, looking back and forth and being like, do I go here or do I go there? And the Lovers card is very much duality. I mean, that is the card for Gemini. So it's addressing you personally. And really what it's saying is a decision is coming. It's coming in June. To be ready for it. I look at this as about 9 weeks total. Some of you guys may be focusing more on, you know, getting work done more independently. Maybe you're working a job, but you've got something that you're doing on the side, and you're deciding whether or not you want to dedicate more time to it, but it may cost a little bit of money to get it going. It is something that I do think you need to do alone, you know, and look to the end of June as being a time where if you're making the decisions now, you may actually start seeing the fruit of your labor around that time. And that Nine of Pentacles is also saying, you know, if you want to live more lavishly, if you want to spend more time with yourself, if you know, this, like I said, I get the feeling that this might be a hobby. Excuse me, taking a sip of water here. It's something that you have to decide if you want to invest more time into it. I'm seeing Geminis that are, you know, trying to do acting, trying to start side businesses, trying to, you know, write scripts and one of the biggest things I see with you guys is, like I said, that duality. You can have a tendency to be a little bit everywhere. What's nice is that, we are going to be seeing around the time of the full moon that Venus is in Gemini. And so you have the opportunity to start really pouring all of your own personal solar energy into a project. And yes, it may cost a little bit money, but I do think that it's definitely something that's worthwhile and worthwhile considering getting started. All right, so moving on to the next sign, Cancer. This is your 5th house. So a 5th house full moon, that's very, very sexy. It's very romantic. It's kind of like getting back in the dating game, finding out about, a pregnancy, the beginning of something new. Something new coming together, especially because you have so many planets, that are going through your 7th house of relationships. So it's like, I almost wonder, are you feeling the romance, Cancer? Are you feeling disconnected? Do you need more? Are you not getting what you need? This can be very flirtatious energy, especially considering Venus is in your 12th house. You may find it challenging to focus on one person, or you may be finding it challenging to even, get back into the dating game. There is a sense of that 5th house Scorpio energy being very, very, very playful and very fun, but it's very sexual. Let's take a look and let's see what comes up for you guys here. I get the impression for Cancer and Cancer risings, you guys really need to be straight up and be honest this month. If you are torn between 2 lovers, if you are in a relationship but noticing shiny things that may be other people, if you are in a relationship and you're sitting around and you're not wanting to be the person to pull the trigger and pull the plug, don't mess around. You have quite a few colorful transits coming, Mars and Pluto and Saturn hanging out around your 7th house, relationship power struggles. And Mars will be going retrograde in Aquarius. And for some of you Cancers, they'll dip into your 7th house. So it'll be reworking relationships. For those of you guys who are single and those of you guys who are not in relationships, this is definitely a time that I recommend getting out and being social, because I do think that there is opportunity to be meeting people. It does seem with the access of the 11th house that it does require work. And maybe perhaps for a lot of Cancer risings, you may want to be taking a look at going and being more socially active with friends, going to classes, maybe looking at some online dating, especially if you've got Uranus moving into your 11th house sphere. The one thing I do see is like a lot of like 7 of Swords energy that actually just like popped up out of nowhere. So that's why I'm bringing that up. Really making sure that, you're being honest and the people that you're dealing with are honest, and not messing around and kind of leading people on and really tuning into whether or not is it sex or is it an actual connection. And I think that can be one of the most challenging aspects, of Scorpio, is whether or not it's sex or is it something more. And so what I would say to you is do go out and meet people. I do see more energy like, relationship like energy for Cancers coming later in the fall. But I think that you guys have some reworking to do. And so you may be tested a couple times in the weeks and months ahead to see if you're really thinking with, if you're really thinking with your head and your heart and not other parts of your body. All right, so moving on to the next sign, we have Leo. And Leo, this is your 4th house. A full moon in the 4th house is strange, especially if it's in Scorpio, because this can very much be an ending of some kind in regards to your home. This can be an ending of some kind, perhaps maybe where you're closing in on a deal in relation to your home. 4th house Scorpio, it's hard for me to feel like, maybe you're going home for some reason, or you're spending more time with family for some reason. For some of you guys, because there's so much action going on in your sixth house, you're having to work from home for whatever reason, or you're having to rework the job, concepts. Or maybe some of you guys are dealing with some health changes or some schedule changes, so you're finding yourself at home a little bit more. A full moon in the fourth house is time to reflect on emotionally what's coming to the surface. Remember that the fourth house is traditionally ruled by Cancer. So in your case, we are dealing with the axis of the 10th and the fourth house. And so what changes are we making on an emotional level to be better prepared for some of the changes that are going to be going on with our career? You have a lot of energy between your sixth and your 10th house. And I really want you to pay close attention to this, because for many of you guys, Uranus is getting ready to make some very exciting aspects into your 10th house. So you may need more space at home. You may be studying more from home. You may be dealing with taking care of, family obligations, or God forbid, there's a loss in the family. You're having to be the one who's responsible for organizing and orchestrating everything. There may very well be a more recent loss in your family, and you're having to reorganize your schedule so you can be available to take care of that. So wishing you the best in that situation. That certainly is a little bit more difficult than some of the other signs this month. And the cards that I get for you are the Three of Swords, the 10 of Wands, and the Judgment card. So woof. So I think that's pretty appropriate for what I was just discussing. It's, if it's not physically having to go and, help with family and move things or make some changes in the home, it's certainly emotionally clearing house, and perhaps an impending ending, or, taking care of, finalizing things for a family member is possible this month. The Judgment card is also saying it may be in preparation. And so I'm seeing a lot of Leo risings who are having to say goodbye to certain aspects of their life. It may not necessarily be somebody passing, but it may be, leaving home, moving away from home, taking a new job and having to relocate. So be very open to what happens this month, because a lot of it is really as a result of Uranus getting ready to move into Taurus. And because work and your outer life may be so all over the place, it's really important for you to focus on what security you need at the end of this month. All right, so now we are moving on to Virgo. And for Virgo, this is your third house. The third house in relation to communication, letters, siblings, things of that nature, short distance travel. I see a lot of new creative projects starting for Virgo risings. I'm getting the impression that many of you guys, between Pluto moving into your fifth house with all that other energy, and Jupiter and this full moon in the third, some of you guys are really starting to learn to relax a little bit. And you may be preparing or planning on taking a trip here in the near future. You may find that now is a really good time to get all of your thoughts and ideas out on paper. There may be some surprising and unexpected things happening with a sibling, whether this is a surprise communication, a surprise visit, maybe perhaps a sibling is having a child or they're celebrating something. People are asking about Virgos finding a new way to make money. That's very possible, but a lot of it has to do with how well you're putting to work all of the energy in your fifth house. So my recommendation would be, really don't just listen to your sun sign, listen to your rising sign, because from what I'm seeing for Virgos, it's not so much about making money this month. Although you do have a lot of support from, Taurus shifting signs and leaving your eighth house soon, and the sun leaving your eighth house soon. I think that maybe you've been looking more at budgeting, but now we're moving into a space of, well, what can we do creatively to be able to make the soul feel fulfilled? And so all of the energy is between the third and the fifth house. What to be expecting. So the Six of Cups comes up the Page of Pentacles comes up, and then we get the Queen of Cups. So kind of as like, you know, textbook predictions as a sound, there may be news of a new family member coming. There may be a child that is being conceived. There may be a new creative project that is being conceived. This energy is very similar to that of the Empress. It's like whatever you're getting out on paper and you're planning and you're working on, you know, the Six of Cups is childlike energy, but it's reminiscing. So if you're going back and back over to, you know, a particular idea and you're fixating on it, you know, the Page of Pentacles is essentially saying, if you are willing to commit and learn, or commit and invest, or commit and hone in on these skills and these abilities, and certainly the Page of Pentacles is about making money, but the Queen of Cups is also saying you have to be emotionally connected. You know, you have to emotionally invest in yourself, or you have to, you know, pay attention to where a woman or a water sign may be connecting to you and coming back to you and talking to you about whether or not you want to work on a project. But once again, it could also be a child. And so I see a lot of this with, you know, full moons that are coming in a third and making an aspect to the fifth house. So it could be news of that, but it could also be a new project that's starting. And kind of similar to what I was saying to Geminis is that, you know, perhaps the theme here is, you know, what do I need to do to hone in on, and what investment do I need to make to be able to make this creative idea reality? Now we move on to Libra. Libra, this is your second house. And, you know, the transits here are the axis between your second house of material possessions and your eighth house of endings. And you may be finding that it is possible, because of all of the energy in your fourth house, that you are finding out about an inheritance or coming into some type of money, perhaps maybe looking at making some investments. Some of you guys are carefully looking at your budgeting and realistically what you can afford, or what you and your partner can afford in terms of making some physical changes in your home. There's certainly a lot of disturbing stuff that kind of comes up in your fourth house that can indicate that, you know, you've got some issues with the family, or some issues with a home situation, or with a landlord, that emotionally it can be very distressing. And so it kind of looks like, you know, many things in your life are apt to change. And really, a lot of it has to do with what security do you have within your own personal finances, but also within a partner's, or how other people can help you. You're kind of getting it from all angles, as of most of the signs this month. So, you know, for Libras, my recommendation would be take a look at what's going on emotionally first. You know, anything that's happening within your home or in your family, or just a reflection of what's going on with you emotionally. But certainly it's hard for me to kind of shake the fact that you do have so much energy in your fourth house and your eighth house. Something may be unexpectedly coming out of the blue. And I don't think it's going to happen on the full moon. You know, usually we'll see things come to fruition within about a 28-day period, but pay attention to when Uranus goes into your seventh house, because that may suddenly bring up unexpected expenses or unexpected money kind of coming to you. And you shift out of, you know, everything that I'm doing for myself versus, you know, what are other people doing to help me? The cards that I pull for you, Libra, are the Ace of Pentacles, the Seven of Pentacles, and the Eight of Wands. So yes, I do think that it's a combination of the two things. I think, you know, based off of what I'm seeing, that Ace of Pentacles is about financial security. This may be something that's taking a month, you know, to come completely to fruition, or a year to come to completely into fruition. Some of you guys may be trying to plan a move. And so what kind of comes up with that Seven of Pentacles is like taking your time, you know, potentially putting money to the side, or looking at investing money. And I do think that money is actually coming in also with that last card. So it's kind of saying like, you know, Eight of Wands, you know, things are going to get moving and things are going to start coming in very quickly, or something, a situation could arise very quickly that would bring you money unexpectedly. What I would say to you is do not be super hasty with spending money right now, because this full moon is going to illuminate, you know, what you have and what you do not have. Okay, so moving into Scorpio. Scorpio, this is your full moon for the year. This is happening in your first house. So it is very much connected and associated with yourself, how you personally are changing and evolving, what attention is brought to your physical body. Somebody's asking questions about the rising or the sun. Both, but for my predictions, it's much more associated with the rising, but certainly both. So for Scorpio, this is about what's going on with you. Okay, what do you need versus your partners? And I especially encourage Scorpio risings to go learn about, Uranus getting ready to enter into your seventh house. Basically, however you're shifting and whatever, understandings you're coming to right now, and whatever is being illuminated for you, your physical body, where you find yourself, what your own personal patterns are, is really harmonizing with your idea of security. So it's like, especially these Scorpio risings that now see that Jupiter in their first house, you're becoming more conscious and aware of what you need for security. What's going on with your body, what's going on with your surroundings, your relationship to yourself. And then you see all of these planets now moving into your second house in Capricorn. And it's like, whoa, your idea of security is radically, shifting and radically changing. Excuse me, your third house. So, this may have to do with how you're communicating to other people, how you're explaining yourself to other people, how you're coming across to other people. My recommendation would be that you really want to watch how you communicate in your authoritative tone. You really want to pay attention and watch what's going on potentially, with your siblings, or where you're going, or where you're traveling to. It's like, even though I'm a Libra rising, I'm a Scorpio, and a lot of what's been coming up to me more so recently is like, oh, where am I supposed to be going? Like, I'm supposed to be traveling somewhere. Like, I'm supposed to go and, do a stint in a particular place. And why does this keep coming up? So if you're kind of picking up on that, or if you're getting that may be something that's really good for you to hone in on and focus on right now. All right. So let's take a look and let's see what comes up for you specifically, Scorpio. But if there is an area of your life, or a particular habit, or a particular pattern that you have that you're not thrilled about, this may be a really good time to let it go. This is a time where you're going to have a light shined, on you more than usual. So you may be more in the public eye than usual. People may be noticing you more than usual. Those of you guys who are not in relationships, now that Jupiter is around, it certainly makes it more so likely to be seen more. I do think that those of you guys who are partnered may be finding that it's challenging balancing the relationship aspect with the amount of personal growth that's going on. So let's take a look and let's see what comes up. Okay. So one of the things that comes up here is that Scorpio may be determining a lot of serious decisions in regards to their relationships. The card that I pulled was the Justice card. And the Seven of Swords. So it's kind of like, all right, well, what's going on? Do I want to be, moving through this and moving more into a direction of, being able to have some security in my relationships? Is this something that I really want right now? Am I able to get what I need potentially from a partner? Have I hit that point yet? Am I better off on my own? The next two cards that come up are the Queen of Coins and the King of Cups. So it's kind of like, to be honest with you guys, if there is any clarity that you're seeking in regards to a relationship this month, I do think that you're going to get it. However, kind of looking at some of these cards, I'm not entirely convinced that you are necessarily settled in something. Obviously, some of you guys with that Seven of Swords, once again, making its appearance is kind of saying like, you're psychic, like you're picking up on things. Like if you feel like a partner may not be all in, they may not be all in. And, this is why I said, go and take a look at Uranus going into your seventh house, because it's going to show you where you may have a partner that's being a little less than honest. Uranus transits are always fun in the seventh house. It's now leaving my natal seventh house. And it's been 7 years, and I've had God knows how many relationships and been engaged about two and a half times. Let's just say that. And now that it's leaving, I'm really excited just to see it go, because it's hopefully going to stabilize my personal life. But for those of you Scorpio risings who are just getting started with this transit, it's not abnormal for this transit to start off with a bang, with a relationship ending or a sudden relationship coming in. So tune into your extrasensory abilities, and really, hone in on that, because I also see a lot of stuff coming up with, this moon trining Neptune in your 5th house. And if you're feeling like in any way, maybe you're not quite getting what you're needing, or maybe you're feeling like there's something else coming up for you. It's like, yes, something else actually may be coming up for you, Scorpio. Don't live in fear. Don't feel like you have to have a relationship for security. Like, sex is not security. Okay. It's taken me a really long time to realize that. Sometimes it takes us a period of having to learn how to go a year without being in a relationship to realize that just because we have a physical partner doesn't mean we have a spiritual partner. So reflect on that in the relationship with yourself. Thank you, Audria. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to Kay also, who's telling everybody she's going to be lighting a candle to help us get through this energy for the full moon. Thank you. We appreciate that. We're now moving on to to Sagittarius. Sag. What an illuminating full moon this is going to be for you. This is going to be in your 12th house. So essentially what you've got going on is you have a message coming to you. When you have this full moon that's happening in your 12th house, it's about meditation. It's about retreating. It's about what you get in dreams, what you receive in dreams. I also keep seeing over and over and over that something else significant that's going to happen requires you to work with water. And I think a lot of this is because of the Neptune placement at the time of the moon. So Sagittarians, maybe you want to, go swimming. You focus on taking a ritual bath, maybe, going and seeing some natural water, being near the water, like working with like Neptune. This could very well be something that can really help you tune into the energies at play and better bring you whatever messages you need personally in a dream space. You might want to focus on like astral traveling, or you might want to focus on being able to lucid dream and working in a dreamscape, because I think that a lot of the things that come up for the next month for you may be a little bit more in another dimension or in another realm. So it's kind of like you have to work with a different element to like hone in and like really bring down that energy, if that makes any sense. Of course, it's making some rather significant aspects to your 2nd house. And so the 2nd house is like, if I were to take my hands and go, okay, this is the ground, then the 12th house is like, this is the, the ethers, if that makes sense to you. So a lot of the things that you're picking up psychically, that you're seeing in dreams, that you're feeling, it may take some time for it to like physically develop. It may be a really great time for you to actually go and get a reading. It may be a time to go to a retreat, but take the messages that come to you at this time very literally, because I think that you're going to get a message. The 12th house, Mary said, can be scary. At times it can be, because it deals with the deep subconscious and the things that we cannot see. And so when you have this full moon access between the 12th house and the 6th house, what you're essentially seeing is where there are things that are going on behind your back or when you're not aware. And you want to really be careful and be cautious about financial dealings this month. Mars, Pluto, Saturn, all in Capricorn in your 2nd house, making some aspects to your 12th house. Be careful with signing contracts, agreeing to financial transactions. Make sure that you're conscious and aware of everything that's going on there financially. Make sure you have some security here. The card that I got for you was the High Priestess, the Two of Pentacles, and the Knight of Swords. So yes, use your intuition. Your intuition knows best. If you're kind of on the fence about making a financial choice, you may opt actually to wait till next month, if at all possible. It's also saying with the High Priestess that you're kind of aware that it could go one way or another. If you're faced with having to make an on the spot financial decision, I would actually say it's best to wait, because the Knight of Swords is going to put the pressure on you to make a choice, or it may be a sudden alert. I mean, this could be as simple as, you get an alert that maybe perhaps, one of your credit cards has been authorized without your authorization, or this might be a good month to double and triple check your bank accounts and just make sure that there isn't any funny stuff going on, because, Scorpio in the 12th house has to do with unexpected financial things, or people prying. So double and triple check all your security stuff. Don't be feeling rushed or pushed into making some decisions if you're not comfortable with it. Capricorn, this is your 11th house. Okay, so basically for you guys, all of the energy that is coming up for you is the 11th house. So it has to do with, associations, friends coming together, celebrating something. There may be things that are shifting with a friendship. You've also got all of this other stuff that is shifting for you currently in your first house with the Pluto, Saturn, Mars. And this is just kind of like the classic case of like you're changing and you're shifting in such a frequency that you may be finding it really challenging to interact with other people, or like you may be feeling that you're like outgrowing some of your friendships. You may be feeling that you're outgrowing some of these friendships because you're no longer resonating energetically or on like the same realm. Like I'm seeing a lot of like Capricorns and Capricorn risings that are just, they have so much responsibility right now that there's so much on their plate that they're finding it hard to actually break away and find the time to do stuff. But whenever you're having a full moon in your 11th house, there's some kind of an illumination going on about a friend. So there may be information that comes out about a friend. You may have a friend reach out to you unexpectedly. You may have somebody reach out to you and ask you if you want to go and do something, because the 11th house and the 5th house axis is about having fun. So certainly with the 5th house being in Taurus, Capricorn's like, I don't care if it's hard work, it's about a work-life balance. And with Uranus going into your 5th house, some of you guys may find that it's about dating and getting back into the dating game and getting out there and meeting people. And, suddenly, all of this energy on your ascendant is making it more challenging to relate to people, to which I would say, then get out there and make new friends. If you don't like the friends that you have, then go out and make new friends. You're going to be the most like the 5 people you spend time with. So, if you're not crazy about some of the people you're spending time with, and if you don't feel like they're contributing to your sense of, development, to your own personal success, if you're the person who's trying to start your own business, but you've got these friends that are just kind of holding your back, and maybe they don't have some of the same ideas and lust for life that you should be, then make some changes. Replace one friend with one power hitter friend, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So this may be the month that you start to kind of tune in and realize how much you need friends, but maybe perhaps you need to make changes. The card that I get is the Empress, the Emperor, and the 6 of Swords. So what else is interesting is that 11th, 5th house access can potentially be like what was a friendship could be something more. And you may find that maybe perhaps a friend has a little bit more of an interest than you thought, or you're coming up on some, making some new friends and networking with some more powerful people. The Emperor and the Empress. So this is talking about the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And so that very much I do think is the epitome of kind of what's going on in your chart, that very Venusian energy of your 5th house. But also that still very powerful energy of your 11th house, and that perhaps maybe you're going to be venturing out of your social circles. Maybe perhaps right now you're in a little bit of a limbo. Maybe you're in between, not entirely sure if you're really ready for a relationship. Somebody said yin yang, absolutely. But I think you're in this in-between place where something is coming in. And I think that that's significant to mention, because many of you guys still may feel like you're under construction, but just because you're under construction does not mean that you're benched.
So this is a good month to potentially go and see some energy that can be complementary. It's like, you're working all the time, you're under so much pressure that it really would be good for you to get out this month. Some of you guys may be finding some real significant partners and not even realize it, because it may be starting off as a friendship. That can be challenging, having Pluto or Saturn on your ascendant. I mean, essentially, you're giving certain things up. But what's really interesting is, you have that seventh house aspect where, the seventh house is Cancer, and it's about security. And so, I'm seeing, Spico, what you're saying about, relationship stuff, coming after work stuff. And so one of the things that I would say to you is that perhaps maybe part of this is through your networking and your social circles, and maybe doing a lot of 11th house work, that, you are going to go and find connections online and find more stable people online, or go and find more stable, for those of you guys looking for work and looking for jobs, I would say working with the internet, networking with the internet, going and finding recruiters. These are all ways that you can use the energy in a very beneficial way. A Scorpio full moon in this particular house for you is like searching. So go and search online, go and find somebody who can do the work for you. So I would really recommend recruitment, or putting the word out. And that might be a really great way, because that energy funnels into your first house. Okay, so now moving into Aquarius. Aquarius, this is your 10th house. So essentially for you guys, this is a full moon in your career sector. And what I want to remind you is that there are going to be quite a few things changing in the immediate near future, like in the next month or two for Aquarians. Many of you guys have already started experiencing it, having the nodes moving through significant parts of your chart, and specifically the South Node. But the South Node and Mars are going to play some games here in the next 2 months that may require you to make some significant changes in terms of your physical location, where you're living in reference to where you're working, how you're making changes in your home so you can be better working. And so a full moon in your 10th house at times can be kind of completing a project, giving, a significant speech or a presentation at work. Maybe some of you guys are publishing something significant. Some of you guys may potentially be putting something significant out there, or making some changes in your career sector. What's interesting about this transit also is that you have all of these aspects that are being made here still, between your between Aquarius and Capricorn. And so if you kind of look at the chart, yes, this is happening in the 10th house, but you're also seeing that there's a lot coming specifically from the 8th and the 12th house as well. My recommendation for you Aquarians is that if you have something significant that you want to be taking to a boss or a superior, this may be the month to do it. If you are considering that you want to maybe potentially relocate, you may be thinking about looking for ways to transfer, looking for new places to go live and to go work. This may be the time to be talking about that, having those discussions. I'm seeing also a lot of you guys that are, really focusing on, like I said, what's going on with your living situation. So with a full moon, you're going to see both the 10th and the 4th house axis being illuminated. And so that new moon is coming soon in your 4th house. And so there's a lot of things around your physical home, your family. Some of you guys may be contemplating if you have to relocate for a job. The cards that I got are the 3 of Wands, the Hangman, and the Ace of Wands. And so really what it's saying is don't act too brashly within the next 3 weeks, 3 months. There are changes coming. This is very significant astrologically for that June, July, August. So if you kind of look at we're in the end of April, maybe perhaps on the 3rd month, you have a better understanding of where you could go. Maybe you're accepting a job. Maybe you're finding that the job stuff is kind of in limbo and you're taking something, but you're having to wait for some reason. The 3 of Wands is planning effectively and moving ahead. Well, the Hanged Man is saying, hold up, hold back, wait a second, be in suspension for a little bit. Now is not quite the time yet. And there need to be more things that come into light before we make a choice. The Temperance card did jump out last. So it's also saying there are a few things that need to be tinkered with and that need to be moved before you can actually make this shift and make this change, be that physically or emotionally. But the Ace of Wands is the promise of a new energy. In the summertime, something shifting, something creative, igniting. Many times I see this come up for clients when it's talking about a new project or a new career aspect. Moving on to Pisces. Pisces, this is your ninth house. Um, so a full moon in your ninth house is illuminating the access of the ninth and the third. So what we're bringing up right now is kind of the theme of, what you're completing. Maybe perhaps you're tuning into whatever, you've been working on since, last fall. You set intentions back at the end of last year to maybe travel more, maybe to be completing a program. Maybe you've been focusing on, taking your occult stuff, full circle and really going out with it. Maybe you're going to start teaching. So something significant is happening for Pisces. Because from what it looks like to me, you guys are just on the brink of getting word that maybe you're going to be traveling here soon. More specifically, this might be coming in closer to mid to the end of May. And so what I would say is that whatever you're wrapping up and you're completing right now in relation to education, philosophy, teaching, traveling, you're going to get word for this stuff pretty soon. The other thing that I'm seeing here is that because of the aspects of the third and the ninth house, not only does it have to do with travel, but it also has to do with education. So specifically for what's coming up with you guys, I want you to take a look at both of these charts, because although the full moon it is in the ninth house, I kind of get the impression that you're being asked to go and work with groups of other people or shed some kind of light or bring something to other people. I have a personal friend who's a good friend of mine who's a Pisces, and she's got this going on very, very much. And she's getting ready to, go and start touring. But in the midst of that, she's also kind of teaching and doing some other things. And so what I think is going to happen, somebody's saying Pisces have been going through too much, is that you really want to tune in to that Neptune energy. Like, I know that Neptune can be a bit of a pain in the ass, but having Neptune in Pisces actually, I think, is going to benefit you in this way, because it's pulling you out of like a victim mentality this month. Like if you're a Pisces rising, Pisces moon, Pisces sun, and you've really been in a bit of a funk and you feel like you've just kind of had your head in the sand, this energy, I think, is going to do really well for you, because you're getting some really nice aspects and some sextiles from planets in Taurus. And you're getting some really nice aspects also from planets in Capricorn. Jupiter and Neptune making squares at this time is kind of showing you like where your dreams can become a reality. So maybe perhaps you've been beating yourself up and kind of feeling like, oh, have I been too idealistic? Da, 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 da. No, I don't think that's the case at all. You're going to have some kind of epiphany that's kind of coming, but realize that it may be twofold. So it may not necessarily be exactly what you think. I still see an aspect of you sharing knowledge with people. Okay, so the cards that I'm pulling up for you, specifically with what's coming up, oh my goodness, it's exactly what I thought. The Wheel of Fortune, the Chariot, and the Ace of Cups. So really, it's like, I don't think I could have picked better cards for Pisces. Being that I've got quite a few Pisces friends, I can vouch for you guys. You guys are going through it. But the Wheel of Fortune, the wheel is turning, so things are changing. This is also very much associated with Jupiter. And being that it's, got this illuminating full moon in your ninth house, is that you're getting an opportunity to travel, or you're getting an opportunity to shed light. You're being given a gift. So the other card that came up was the Chariot card. So that's talking specifically about the month of July. Pay close attention to the month of July, making plans in advance for actually going somewhere, having to get all of your ducks in a line first, and then making sure that everything's ready before you move forward. And then that Ace of Cups is about, your cup is runneth over. It's like emotionally being very invested in what's going on. Like it's about also like a very emotional time. And so some of you guys might be finding that you're getting news, and the news is just so happy and so overwhelming that you could just break down and start crying, because you're getting this like you're getting this assistance from the universe right now. And in a way, it's kind of saying, we're going to help you, but you have to continue to keep passing something on, or you have to help people in the process. And so I do think that there is some kind of lesson involved here about spreading what you know, and teaching other people, and taking your dream and taking it to a new place, and certainly having the opportunity for love to be involved. When Uranus goes, definitely when it goes into Taurus, it's going to rock all of the signs. But you may find that you're taken to places where you're interacting with people from different places of the world, or different cultures, and you may be having a love affair, or with a culture, with a space, with a place, with a person. And so I would have to say things are really on the up and up for Pisces, and I feel like you're going to be doing exceptionally well, and really kind of having everything finally become a reality. This is what's been really challenging for Pisces with Neptune, is this feeling of, I can see it, I can see it, I can see it, why isn't it here yet? So I think that you're going to start to begin to see these things become actually tangible in the next few months. But especially in May, you're going to start getting wind about making plans about something in July. It's really interesting. I'm reading what some of you guys are saying. Thank you guys, for those of you guys who are feeling like this is an alignment. I mean, I really look forward to continuing to come on here, and seeing you guys and hearing about how things are developing, and where things are going for you, and how you guys are moving through the energy in the next couple of weeks ahead. But I really feel positive. I mean, as much as the energy started off very heavy, it's interesting. I've noticed that most of my readings are channeled. So it's just kind of even though I'll talk for an hour and a half, I get to the end of the reading and I'm like, oh, I feel really great and really light. So I do think that there is something a significant shift coming from this, and just even relaying some of these messages to you guys, I feel a lot better. If you guys have any questions, any comments, anything like that for me, don't hesitate to comment below. If you check out my link underneath this video, you can take a look at my website. I've got some media on there if you want to learn more about me, if you want to take a look at what specials I have to offer. I am a clairvoyant, a Western astrologer, an evolutionary astrologer, and I read tarot. So if you want to book a session, please don't hesitate to do so. Otherwise, I appreciate your likes, your comments, and your shares. And I will be back on Wednesday, I believe in the morning Pacific time. And I'm going to be doing my United States transit chart reading. So those always get a lot of fun comments, and I'm looking forward to doing that, because I've been working on this for really the past 2 weeks, to come up with a lot of theories and a lot of where I want to go with this, to be able to help everybody understand the energies at play. Try to stay grounded, guys. Do whatever you can to really stay present this week, and perhaps maybe we all need to be a little bit more aware of the energies at play until the upcoming full moon in Scorpio. And I encourage you guys to really reflect on what we need to let go of, and not in a sense of, oh, it's a full moon release. I'm talking about releasing fear and being able to plant seeds of stability and innovation and change and unity, so we can get through these transits and be able to hopefully come out the other side. I will talk to all of you guys very soon. Thank you guys so much for being here. For everybody in the chat, I love you guys so much. And I really genuinely look forward to seeing all of you guys very, very soon. Okay, so hang in there and enjoy the next couple of days until I see you on Wednesday. Have a good one. Bye-bye.